Okay. Okay, so I will say we've got some folks from Cleveland, some folks from Cuyahoga County. Um, but I might not cover your like all of the specific rules of your specific municipality if that's where you're looking to make comment. Um, but we're also going to talk about, writing effective public comment and all that good stuff. Okay. Okay, so I'm actually to make sure there's no I'm gonna minimize you guys, but if someone has a question, just unmute and interrupt me. Okay, cool. Okay. Public comment. Today we're going to talk about what to include in your public comment and how to be compelling. And then we're going to talk about the logistics of some of the agencies that you might be making comment to, including Cleveland City Council, Cuyahoga County Council, NOACA, and the Greater Cleveland Regional Transit Authority. Okay, so why public comment? Um, I'm sure many of you might relate to the experience of shooting your council member an email and not getting a response. Uh, of giving them a call and not getting a call back, trying to be in contact, trying to get them to hear you, and you're just not even sure if you're getting through. That's a very real experience, and I think public comment is often one of those places where they can't skirt you and try to avoid hearing what you're saying. Although you'll find that sometimes council members will not really look at you or not really acknowledge you. In general, it is a place where you are, going to be heard. I think it's also a place where well-organized people can definitely make a difference. It's not super often that you're seeing the same people return to public comment talking about the same general themes, general issues, week after week, month after month. It when it's used in that kind of way of staying on these decision makers, it can be really effective, and we've definitely seen that happen. But it's not common. It's often used as a kind of one-off opportunity to raise an issue, which is great for, but also when it's being used consistently again and again over time, it can be extra effective because you're going to be one of the few people that they hear again and again, week after week. So but whether you're making kind of a one-off comment or trying to stay on them about a specific issue that you want them to address, it's a great tool. And another reason it's, I think, particularly great is because an op-ed, for example, it takes a while to write. Getting something published takes time, but writing a public comment and giving a 3-minute speech, it's not a huge chunk of your time. I think it's a lot of bang for your buck in terms of effort and time. Okay. So what to include in your public comment? First off, always want to introduce yourself. You want these folks to know who you are and why you're there. Yeah, I think including things like where you live is important because that will definitely trigger, if John goes and says, "Hey, I'm from West Park," Charles Life, the councilman here, is going to, his ears will perk up and he'll tune in more. Talk about how long you've lived there and whatever you think is important for them to know. Don't just launch right into your comment or your issue. Definitely introduce yourself. Second, personal stories are persuasive. So, people like to go up to the mic and rattle off data and numbers, which is important, and I think there's a balance for all of this. But ultimately, what is going to get people to listen and engage are personal stories. What do you ask yourself questions like, what do you uniquely have to share? What experiences make you qualified to speak on this? Like Erin, you mentioned having a kid and wanting to raise them in a place where they can bike, and also having personal experiences with near misses or almost being hit by a car. Those are the kinds of things that are going to catch these decision makers' attention, and understand why you're there. I think too, I often get worried when I'm making these public comments of like, am I the right person to be talking about this? Am I an expert? Like, these are really knowledgeable people in general. And like, I think leaning into like what your personal experiences have given you to make you qualified to speak on this is great. What pushed you to make public comment? Was it a specific incident that happened? Was it a specific, story that you saw? Is it a specific project? Is it something that you saw another city do and you're like, why aren't we doing this? Definitely lean into what pushed you to be there. Something that can go a long way are acknowledgments and thank yous. I think this can be tough sometimes because I know I get frustrated with how little is happening, especially in the city of Cleveland, but I'm sure it's relatable across all these cities is like, I don't really want to get up there and thank all of them for the little tiny things that they did. But unfortunately, it is a very effective way to get people's attention and buy-in. Looking at it also shows that you're like tuned in and what they're up to and what they're doing. I think you'll hear council members often say this is a thankless job. They really revel in how difficult the job is, which it is, and I think acknowledging and thanking them for whatever they have done it's a very helpful tool, just to get them to listen and not think of you as the enemy. So looking at past things that they voted on, projects they've been involved in your community, if they've ever come on a bike ride or anything, even if you're reaching into the past, acknowledgement and thank yous are a very helpful tool. And finally, always include like a call to action or a request, like what specifically this body can do. You really don't want to like rattle off all these issues that you're seeing and not ask for a specific action. And like, this can be tough if there's not legislation on the table related to it, or if there's nothing specific happening, but even calls to action like, hey, become more knowledgeable in this. Hey, give me a call back. I've been calling you, give me a call back. Have a meeting with me. Any kind of action or specific request is an important component of your public comment. Okay. Some more tips, advice. Practice, time yourself speaking slow, and make sure you finish in time. It is not a fun feeling when like the bell rings or the buzzer goes off and you are mid-sentence, and they will often cut you off. And it makes you look a little unprofessional or underprepared. And so practicing several times in advance, and timing yourself and making sure you are comfortably within whatever time limit is set, is very important. And if that means you have to be more succinct and you can't touch on all the things that you want to touch on, I would say don't plan to talk super fast. Don't time yourself best case scenario. Time yourself slowly with pauses, and make sure you're well within that time. I've definitely seen people go up to the mic like without a written script. I often have it on my cell phone because I don't really want to be holding a piece of paper and kind of reading from my cell phone, although I've practiced, and so I only have to really look to remind myself what's next. But some people do go in without a script or a plan, and that's great. And I think if that's how you want to do it, that's totally fine. But just be watching the clock and make sure you're staying within the time constraint. Second, data is great, but put it into context and lean into stories. I think like written public comment and like op-eds and blog posts, like those are places where I think numbers and data make a lot of sense, but public comment less so, because I think I wouldn't expect these decision makers to like write down the numbers and remember them, or it just might not be in a context that they understand. Like if I were to say 76 people have been killed on Cleveland streets so far this year, that is a number to them, but I mean they deal with all kinds of death in the city all the time, and I think telling a compelling story about a person who was killed on our streets can go a much longer way to like getting them to listen and understand the problem. Third, if you don't like public speaking, consider written public comment. All of the bodies that I will touch on today accept some other kind of written comment. And I think most city councils do. So if you don't like public speaking, written comment is a great option. Or if you just like time to make it down to City Hall every week, that it's a great option. Like, and I'll talk more about this later. But you know, when I talk about being consistent and going week after week, if you can only publicly speak once a month or every couple months, still submitting some written public comment every week or however often they meet, it can be a really effective tool. In the same vein, council meetings are often not the only opportunity to give comment. So I think most people lean on those like main council meetings to make comment. But often these bodies have committee meetings where public comment is also accepted and available. And oftentimes those committee meetings are where decisions are happening more often. So people very often go to Cleveland City, those main council meetings, and do public comment, but all of their committees also accept public comment. It's a little more complicated and we'll get into it, but that is where decisions are made, where there's a lot more conversation happening. Like the rules are more lax, so they might even ask you questions back and engage in a dialogue versus like any like main council meeting, like, you know, you're just making a comment generally and it's not a conversation. So looking at the rules for committees can be a very effective advocacy tool. Yeah, and if anyone has any questions or want to talk more about that, let me know. Be aware of existing public comment campaigns or like what political movements are kind of happening at the time. So for example, right now in the city of Cleveland, we are drawing new ward districts. We're drawing new districts, and that is the main thing that people are talking about. And I can tell you that the next time city council meets, I'm guessing most everyone that's making public comment is going to be making public comment about these maps. And so that would not be a good meeting for me to sign up and talk about traffic calming because it's not on the council members' radar at all. This big thing is happening. And I'm just going to be drowned out by an organized group of people that are all talking about the same thing. And yeah, just be aware, like if there's a group that's been filling up public comment week after week, it might not be the best time to use this tool, if that makes sense. And finally, think about what will relate to most of these officials. So like Jordan, you said, sometimes when we're talking about bike stuff, we're talking into the void. And I feel like that's very true. And I think we really need to get into the heads of these decision makers as to like what actually resonates with them. Will they resonate with the image of like all children come back to school? Some of them will, for sure. Some of them will not. Some of them will be more interested in like what are the safety implications? What are the economic development implications? Research, like if you have a specific target, your specific council member, research like what are their hot button issues? Are they really into sustainability and environment? Are they super into like getting more businesses into their ward or the city? Knowing that and trying to, craft, because transportation frankly touches everything. Like we can really frame transportation in a lot of different contexts, relate it to a lot of different issues. And so being aware of what will relate to those officials can help ensure your public comment is effective. Any questions so far? Oh, now we're gonna chat about Cleveland City Council. I understand that some of you you might never make public comment, but at Cleveland City Council. But we're just going to go through a few different legislative bodies and talk about their logistics. So Cleveland City Council meets every Monday night at 7, except during winter and summer breaks, there's like a 1-month period where they don't meet. It is funkier than these other groups that we'll be talking about because they take signups in advance, noon on the Wednesday before their Monday meeting, and it fills very quickly, like within the first hour usually. It's limited to 10 people at 3 minutes each. It's most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, public comment will start at the beginning of the meeting. Show up early, give yourself extra time to get through security. And yeah, like I said, each speaker gets 3 minutes. Watch the clock, speak clearly into the microphone, and make sure, again, that you keep it to your set amount of time, because they will cut you off. For committees, first step is figuring out what committee you want to address. You can look at the list, but for our issues, if you're talking about transportation, there is a transportation and mobility committee. There is a development and sustainability committee. There's a finance committee. Figure out which one would be the relevant one, and this goes for Cleveland Heights and Akron. I don't know for sure, but I imagine the committees also accept public comment. Identify the chair and figure out when they're going to meet, and then you contact the chair via email and ask to speak at the meeting. This is a little bit, I guess, like sketchier of a way to sign up than regular council meetings, because like you have to hope that the chair will acknowledge you. They have full rights to say, no, we're not accepting public comment at that meeting. And then the chairperson will set the rules. So like I said, committees can be more informal, where you can have more of a conversation, and there's no formal set time limit. Cuyahoga County Council. So you're going to notice that there's some like big disparities between some of these groups. So they meet on usually every other Tuesday, but it's not a perfect schedule. And Committee of the Whole meets directly before them. They limit to 30 speakers with 2 minutes each. So significantly more speakers than Cleveland. Sign up as in person on a written sheet right before the meeting, 30 minutes before you can go in and sign up. And those are the same rules at committee meetings. So show up, you sign their public comment sheet, and wait for your turn. NOACA. So I'm not going to get too in depth into NOACA, because we're doing a whole separate training about it. But NOACA is the Northeast Ohio Area Coordinating Agency, and they handle a ton of federal money that is given to municipalities for transportation projects and environmental projects. And they do a lot of planning for not just Cuyahoga County, but it's a 5-county region. Summit is not a part of that. And they have a good amount, like their role is kind of funky and interesting, and but they definitely influence what projects get built. So if you're looking for whether a trail is being planned to be built in your neighborhood in the next 5 to 10 years, NOACA is really a big deciding factor in that. So comments must, for their rules, comments must be directly related to an agenda item. You can kind of bend this rule how you want. There are definitely ways to make it so, if you have a topic you want to talk about and it's not really on the agenda, there's ways to bend it. I mean, there's usually a way to do it. It's again in person, 5 minutes before the meeting starts, a limit of 3 minutes each, and a total of 30 minutes for public comment. You can give out handouts, which is not true of these other county and city council with prior approval. And you can even use their presentation software. So if you have like a little PowerPoint, if you contact them within 3 business days, you can also like share things on their presentation screen. And we're going to talk more in depth about this and ways that you can influence NOACA at the NOACA training. And finally, Greater Cleveland Regional Transit Authority, often on the third Tuesday at 9 a.m. They don't usually allow comment at their committee meetings. There's no formal sign up. You raise your hand, speaker calls on you, and they also allow verbal comments via phone call. You have 2 opportunities to speak at the beginning and at the end. At the beginning, if it's related to an agenda item, but also again, you can kind of you can make it work typically. And then at the end, if it's like something not related to an agenda item, and unlike many of these other meetings, like they give the board time to respond to your comments. So that is a cool thing about the RTA. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing so I can see everyone. I zipped through that, but I kind of want to talk about your thoughts and yeah, I'm interested in hearing any questions. Also, like, do you guys have do you have concerns about public comment? Are you nervous about it? Like, what are things that you're thinking about with public comment?
I think I'll go first. I've found I've had some specific issues living in the city where I've had problems and not gotten responses, and I've actually contacted councilmen, not just my ward, but other ones, and I found it interesting that a lot of them called me back almost immediately and gave me 20-25 minutes. I'm making inroads with my current councilman too. He's doing a lot of interesting stuff. So I wonder if it'd be advantageous to try to build that bridge ahead of time and kind of get the feel for the environment. Like, hey, here's what I'm thinking. Monroe's got 3 lanes. It really should have 2. What are your thoughts? And he might tell me some things. So I would come to this meeting and they'd kind of know because I've already talked to him too. So that might be advantageous.
Yeah, for sure. I think knowing who your targets are and how they're going to respond to public comment is a good thing. Like, for some reason, some council people or board members like find public comment very aggressive, even though it's like I think there's much more aggressive advocacy tactics. And so it can be like kind of an escalation tool in that way where it's like, if you're not getting phone calls back and you're not getting a response, it is a good way to kind of call people out in a more public setting. Yeah.
No, and I definitely like the idea of kind of like, I don't know, setting out a date because I know city council especially is weird with the limited comment and stuff like that. And, if you can get, let's say 10 people to sign up for comment or something like that, if one person gets through, that's awesome,
Yep.
So I definitely like the idea of like, maybe it's when your report comes out in the spring or something like that, targeted campaigns with that stuff.
Yes. I think too, kind of depending on what your particular circumstances, even though you're one person at a mic, you can be representing a lot of people. So, you can say like, if you're a part of a block club, you can talk to your block club about being a representative of the public comment, and they'll definitely tune in a little more if you're saying I'm here as representing 15 of your constituents, or if you have like organizations in your community that all agree on this and like saying like, hey, I'm here with support from this bike shop and this business and this nonprofit, that can also be a way to kind of make yourself seem bigger than just one person. Do you guys have any like, does anyone here have nerves about public comment, or like, I don't know, are we confident public speakers in the room, or are we like nervous about the idea of getting up there in front of people? Well, I'll just say that like, like I said, like I've seen people go up with like no script, like no planning, and they're just kind of like, I got it, I'm just gonna rattle off, which is totally cool. But a lot of these council members are used to hearing things that are disorganized and like, you know, uh maybe even poorly thought through. And so I think going in with a plan should be enough to like feel confident in what you're saying. Um, yeah.
And I think like another thing too is like Cleveland Documenters is a great resource because,
Yes.
you know, they're going to a lot of these meetings. So it's like if you're trying to figure out what, you know, like you were saying, if council is interested in what you're about to say, you know, it's like you can look back on the last meeting or something like that, kind of see what they're talking about and stuff like that.
I'm gonna pop documenters into the chat. Because yeah, they also have an Akron branch. Chris, have you ever worked with documenters?
I have not, but I know the guy that does the recruiting for them has been into our offices several times. We have people that go out to the ward meetings, so like Ward 3 and Ward 9, which is basically where our footprint is. And we sit through those meetings. And typically we have pretty decent rapport at that. Like, I know even like it's local at the city council level, but at that little, very local level within the ward. And usually when we have issues, it's not until we take it like further beyond that to like the city council level, then it gets washed out in, you know, all the other things that are going on.
Yeah. I'm curious if the thought of giving comment at like a committee meeting is interesting to anyone, or if anyone has any thoughts on that.
I don't have any problem with it. I used to be scared of it when I was probably in high school and mostly through college, but I kind of broke myself of that habit. I was really petrified. I don't know, just doing it over and over again. After a while, you're just like, okay, whatever. So I don't really mind. My problem is, you know, like Parks and Recreation, that show. I'm sure a lot of people watch it. I don't want to come off like the loon. So, you know, talking at those, they always make fun of those people. So, yeah. I don't have a problem talking about it though.
Yeah. Yeah. I think to that point, like staying calm and collected uh is good. Although like sometimes we're talking about very serious things, like, you know, someone was hit on this road and was seriously hurt or killed. And like, you know, I think sometimes we should give ourselves permission to show our anger about things and make sure our emotions are seen.
Yeah, a lot of the other things I'm seeing too is maybe this helps you push through it if you feel passionate about something. There, you know, you look at things like there's a bridge over here for serves about 400,000 people in 5 different communities. 58 people made a comment. So when you make your voice heard, it's really loud. So you know that is important. So I don't know if that makes it harder to talk in public or easier because you know your voice. A lot of people just sit there and complain on social media. They won't take the step of going to this meeting and addressing these people and saying something that maybe they've never heard before. Oh, wow, I never thought of it like that. Well, geez, let's see if we can move some money around. So you might have some
Yeah,
successes with that.
this is very true. You know, much more often you are going to see people moved by being against something. And people that are cool or happy with something are not often the people that are going to come out to these meetings. And so, you know, for example, if someone gets a speed bump or a speed table on their road, all the people that love it are going to be like, cool, like glad the city's doing this job, glad it's done. Like, I'm not going to go out to a council meeting and complain about it, but the people that hate it are moved to do that. And so keeping that in mind, or like if there's a project in your neighborhood, they're putting in a bike lane or they're thinking about it, like the people that are against it manage to move themselves a lot more than the people that are for it.
I had that experience in Brecksville. So
Yeah.
was the only one that spoke in support of it. And there was 3 people that were speaking against it, but Yeah, I don't know. It was a lot of like NIMBYism, but
Yeah.
they ended up building at least some infrastructure, so that was a positive.
Yeah. Yeah, numbers really help with that too, because you know, they'll see you as one guy talking in favor of something, but they'll see those three people as, for some reason, representative of a much larger group of people that are against these things. And so, like, being able to find a neighbor, like one other person to come along with you, can definitely go a long way. Or again, like saying, like, hey, I'm speaking, like, here's a letter I got 5 of my neighbors to sign on. Can definitely help with that. Is anyone planning on making any public comment anytime soon?
I'll wait for the ward maps to settle a little bit.
That's totally
But I
fair.
definitely want to, like, that's something where it's like, I want to stop yelling into the void and actually like yell at people. No, I'm kidding.
Valid.
But, yeah, voice displeasure in person. So,
Any other comments? I know I went through that fast. I hope it was helpful to get you thinking about it.
also sorry to keep butting in here, but the county, like, so I work at the county. I do GIS for them and stuff. But the county has a transportation person now, Annie Pease. So if you were to go to council, like, they are trying to do, I mean, I don't work with her or anything like that. So it's like, I don't want to speak to what she's doing, but it's like, if you were to go to a county council meeting, there is actually like an appetite for, these type of things. There's a lot more sustainability people that they brought on recently, and stuff like that. So I think county council actually is not a bad place to talk either. So
You know, and that reminds me too that like the legislators and the elected officials are almost never the only people that are present at these meetings, like as far as decision makers. Like Cleveland City Council, all of the directors are invited, most of them attend, the mayor's there very often. At, you know, RTA meetings, like it's not just the board, it's also the director of RTA and all of like the high up staff. I don't know if that's true in like Cleveland Heights and Akron, but yeah, you can definitely think about those opportunities as not just people like influencing the elected officials, but a lot of other people are in the room to hear you. It's also so interesting to me too, like how often I'll tune into Cleveland Public Comment and I'll hear people talking about like they're speeding on my street. Like it's dangerous. I don't want to let my kids play outside because of the cars. Like, and these are people that like aren't engaged in our movement at all, but like absolutely relate to what we're doing. And so watching public comment is also a great way to stay in tune of like, who can I be connecting with that share these same concerns? And, you know, often they'll read their name out loud and where they live, and you can like find them on Facebook or whatever. But, you know, there are a lot of people that share our same concerns, and staying tuned into public comment and who's already there making comments can be helpful. Okay. All right. I am going to stop recording